The night was cold and heavy with rain. Dark clouds covered the moon, and the sky roared with thunder again and again. In a quiet rural town, most people were sleeping, windows closed tight, lights turned off, and doors locked. But inside a small wooden house at the edge of the town, a man named Daniel sat awake. He was drinking tea near the window, listening to the rain as it hit the glass. Daniel lived alone, and silence was his usual company. But tonight the silence felt different. The wind howled louder than normal, and somewhere far away, he thought he heard a strange echo. It was not thunder, and not the sound of animals. It was something else, something strange. Daniel stood up and walked to the door. He unlocked it slowly and pushed it open. Cold wind rushed inside, making him shiver. Rain splashed against his face, and the smell of wet earth filled his nose. At first, he saw nothing, only the empty road and dark trees waving like shadows. But then he froze. At the edge of his doorstep lay a shape, a figure, bent low and shaking. Daniel blinked twice, thinking maybe his eyes were playing tricks on him. But no, there was someone there, a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was pale and had a strange silver shine under the lightning. Her arms trembled as she clutched something close to her chest. Then Daniel heard it, a weak cry, high-pitched and sharp, a baby. His heart raced. He stepped closer, and his eyes widened. The woman's face was not fully human. Her eyes were larger, glowing faintly blue even in the dark. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her body thin as if she had not eaten for days. The baby she held was wrapped in a piece of cloth that looked burned and torn. The small creature cried, again, the sound cutting through the storm. The woman looked at Daniel with desperate eyes. Her lips moved, whispering something, words Daniel did not understand. And then she collapsed on the ground, her arms weak, her body shaking. The baby rolled slightly from her chest, its cries growing louder. Daniel stood frozen at the door. Fear gripped his heart, and his mind screamed at him to shut the door. He had heard stories of strange sightings in the sky these past weeks. Rumors of lights flashing in the clouds, people whispering about UFOs. And now here was something real, lying on his doorstep. Was it a trap? Was he being lured into something dangerous? But then he looked at the baby again, small and helpless, crying in the rain. His chest tightened. His fear fought against his humanity. Finally, with a sharp breath, Daniel bent down. He carefully lifted the baby from the wet ground. The child's skin was softer than human skin, faintly glowing under the lightning. But its small fingers clutched his hand tightly, just like any other baby. That single touch melted some of his fear. Daniel carried the baby inside his house. He placed it on a blanket near the fireplace, trying to calm it down. The child's cry slowly softened, as if it could feel warmth for the first time. Daniel glanced back at the door, where the alien woman still lay unconscious. Rain poured over her weak body, her silver skin shining like metal under the storm. For a moment, Daniel hesitated again. Should he help her too? What if she was dangerous? But another voice inside him whispered that no mother carrying a child like this could mean him harm. She had come here not to fight, but to beg. Finally, Daniel returned to the door and pulled her inside. She was lighter than he expected. Weak and trembling, he laid her near the fire, next to her baby. Her breathing was slow, shallow, as if she was on the edge of death. Daniel sat back, staring at the two strangers now lying in his home. His mind was full of questions. Who were they? Where had they come from? And most importantly, why had she left the baby at his door? He thought of calling the authorities, but something deep inside told him not to. If others found out, they would take the mother and baby away. They would not treat them kindly. Daniel could not explain why, but he felt a strange responsibility. It was as if fate itself had chosen his house, his door, his life, and now he was caught in something far bigger than himself. Outside, thunder shook the sky once more. The rain poured harder, drowning the town in darkness. But inside Daniel's house, a fire burned. The alien mother lay unconscious, her baby safe in human arms, and Daniel sat in silence, listening to the storm, his heart beating fast, his mind full of fear and wonder. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. But one thing was clear: his life would never be the same again. The fire crackled softly inside Daniel's small house. Shadows danced on the wooden walls as the storm outside continued to roar. The alien mother lay unconscious, her skin pale and trembling, while the baby made small whimpers on the blanket near the fire. Daniel sat on a chair, leaning forward, his hands pressed together, his face tight with worry. He had never felt so torn in his life. His mind told him to call the police, to call anyone. But his heart kept pulling him back toward the baby. The little creature had stopped crying. It now stared at the fire with wide glowing eyes. Its tiny chest moved up and down as it breathed, soft sounds coming from its lips. It looked so helpless, so small, and Daniel could not stop himself from thinking of human children. The way they depend on adults for everything, the way they trust without fear. This baby, alien or not, was the same. It trusted him already, holding onto his finger earlier as if he was the only safe thing in the world. Daniel stood up slowly and went to the kitchen. He opened his fridge. Searching for something, he found a half bottle of milk and poured it into a cup. He warmed it carefully and then returned to the fireplace. The alien baby tilted its head, sniffing the air as if it could smell the milk. Daniel knelt down and held the cup close. He dipped a spoon and let a few drops fall near its lips. The baby opened its mouth, drinking eagerly. Its small hands waved in the air, and soft humming sounds came out. Daniel smiled weakly, shaking his head, hungry, just like any baby. He whispered under his breath, though his words ended up sounding more like a thought than speech. The baby drank more, and slowly, its glowing eyes grew heavy. It lay back on the blanket, drifting toward sleep. Daniel exhaled, a breath he didn't know he was holding. He placed the cup aside and sat back on the chair, his eyes moving toward the alien mother. She was still breathing, but weakly. Her chest rose and fell as if every breath cost her strength. Daniel wondered what had happened to her, why she had come here, and why she had left her child on his doorstep. There had to be a reason, but right now, there were no answers, only questions. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. His heart pounded as he thought about what to do next. He could call for help, but he imagined what would happen if the government took them away. Scientists, soldiers, experiments, the baby crying inside a cold cage, the mother chained, her eyes begging for mercy. The thought made him sick. No, he couldn't let that happen. But if he didn't call anyone, what then? He was just one man, living alone in a small house. How could he protect them? How could he even keep them alive? The storm outside gave no answers. The rain smashed against the windows, and the wind screamed through the cracks in the walls. Daniel stood and walked toward the window, looking out. The road was empty, only shadows of trees moving like tall ghosts. But he could not shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, might already be looking for them. That maybe lights in the sky, strange visitors, were not far away. He gripped the curtain tightly, his knuckles white. His life had been simple until tonight, but now he was standing between two worlds, and he had to choose. Daniel turned back to the fire, his eyes falling again on the mother and child. The baby stirred in its sleep, making a soft cooing sound. The mother's lips trembled, as if she was whispering in her dream. Daniel walked closer, kneeling beside her. Her face was peaceful but lined with exhaustion. She looked broken, yet at the same time there was something powerful about her, a strength hidden beneath the weakness. Daniel reached out carefully, brushing wet strands of hair or something like hair from her forehead. Her skin was cooler than human skin, but soft. She did not wake, but her breathing calmed. Daniel pulled his hand back quickly. His chest tightened again with doubt and fear. He whispered to himself, "What am I doing?" But even as he said it, he knew the answer. He was helping them because no one else would. He was helping them because it was the right thing to do. It didn't matter that they were not human. It didn't matter that he was afraid. What mattered was that they were helpless, and they had come to his door, and fate had chosen him. Maybe he could not explain it. Maybe he did not understand it, but he felt it deep inside, stronger than any fear. Daniel stood, moving quietly across the room. He gathered extra blankets and covered the mother and child. He placed wood on the fire to keep it burning through the night. Then he sat again in his chair, watching them as the hours passed. The storm began to fade outside, the thunder rolling away into the distance. But inside, the battle in Daniel's heart still raged. One path was fear, the other was compassion. And though fear whispered in his ear, compassion won. By the time the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Daniel had made his choice. He would not call anyone. He would protect them, no matter what came next. The first rays of morning light slipped through the curtains of Daniel's house. The storm was gone, leaving behind wet roads and heavy silence. Birds began to sing in the distance. But inside the small wooden home, everything was still. Daniel sat in his chair, his eyes half closed, tired from a night with no sleep. He had not moved much, watching the baby and its mother all through the dark hours. Every sound outside had made his heart jump. Every creak of wood had made him wonder if danger was near. But somehow the night had passed without interruption. Now, with daylight creeping in, he felt both relief and new fear. Daylight meant others could come, neighbors, strangers, maybe even those who were searching for these two. The baby stirred first. It stretched its tiny arms and opened its glowing eyes. Daniel leaned closer, worried that the child might cry again. But instead, it only looked at him, as if studying his face. Its small lips moved, making a faint humming sound that was almost like a song. Daniel felt his chest tighten again, a strange bond forming between him and the child. He whispered softly, "You're safe here," though he was not sure if the baby could understand. Then a low sound came from the other side of the fireplace. Daniel's eyes shot toward the mother. She moved slowly, her fingers twitching against the blanket. Her lips parted, and a faint breath escaped. Daniel stood quickly, his heart beating fast. He stepped closer, kneeling beside her. Her glowing blue eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. For a moment, she looked confused, lost, as if she didn't know where she was. Her gaze moved from the fire to the wooden walls, then finally to Daniel's face. Her eyes widened, and she gasped softly. She pushed herself up with weak arms, her body shaking. Daniel raised his hands carefully, speaking in a calm voice. "Easy. It's okay. You're safe." She froze, staring at him. Her breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling fast. Her eyes darted toward the baby. When she saw the child wrapped safely near the fire, her whole body relaxed just a little. Tears filled her glowing eyes, sliding down her silver skin. She reached out her trembling hand toward the baby. The child made a soft cooing sound, reaching back with tiny fingers. Daniel watched the moment quietly. The bond between mother and child was clear, powerful, and full of pain. It was the most human thing he had ever seen, even though they were not human at all. The mother tried to speak. Her voice was weak, broken, the words strange and twisted. Daniel could not understand the language, but he heard the desperation in her tone. She spoke again, pointing toward the child, then at him, then placing a hand over her heart. Daniel frowned, trying to guess what she meant. Was she asking him to protect the baby? Was she thanking him for helping? He shook his head slowly, raising his hands. "I don't understand," he whispered, but her eyes stayed locked on his, full of pleading. Something in that gaze told him she trusted him. Or maybe she had no choice. Daniel stood and went to the kitchen. He poured more milk and brought it back. The baby drank again, and the mother watched with wide eyes. She made a sound, almost like a sob. Then she tried to reach for the cup, but her hand trembled too much. Daniel gently guided it toward her lips. At first she hesitated, but then she drank, slowly, carefully. As if tasting something new, her body shook, but some color returned to her skin. She looked at Daniel once more, this time with soft eyes, not full of fear, but something closer to hope. For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the fire crackled, and the baby made small sounds of comfort. Daniel sat back, trying to breathe normally. He could not believe what he was doing. He was feeding an alien in his own home. Not just one, but a mother and her child. And yet, it felt strangely natural. His fear was still there, sharp and heavy. But alongside it was a new feeling, a responsibility, that grew stronger with every passing second. Suddenly, the mother spoke again. Her words were broken, mixed with sounds he had never heard before. But one word stood out, repeated again and again. Hunt, hunt, hunt. Daniel froze. His heart pounded as he leaned closer. She pointed upward, toward the sky, her eyes wide with terror. Then she pointed at the baby and clutched her chest. Daniel's stomach twisted. She was warning him. Someone or something was hunting them, and maybe, just maybe, they were already close. Daniel moved to the window, pulling the curtain slightly aside. The road was still empty, the morning quiet. But now his mind refused to rest. If what she said was true, they had only a little time. He looked back at the mother and child, their eyes on him, trusting him, depending on him. His throat felt dry, but he whispered the only promise he could give, "I'll keep you safe." And as the words left his lips, he felt the weight of them settle heavy on his shoulders. Because deep inside, he knew this was no simple promise. It was the beginning of something far greater, a fight he never asked for, but a fight he could not walk away from. The morning sun climbed higher, but Daniel's house still felt heavy with shadows. He kept pacing from the window to the fireplace, his nerves stretched thin. The alien mother sat weakly near the fire, her child curled against her chest. She was awake now, her glowing eyes watching him, every movement sharp with fear. Daniel could feel it. She was afraid not of him, but of something else, something far away yet close at the same time. Daniel stopped pacing and finally spoke, even though he knew she might not understand. "You keep saying hunt. What does it mean? Who's hunting you?" The alien mother tilted her head, her lips moving with effort. Strange words spilled out, soft but urgent. Daniel shook his head slowly, frustrated. He could not understand her language, but then, through broken words and gestures, she began to show him. She placed her hand on her chest, then tapped the baby's small head. Last, she whispered, her voice cracking. Daniel frowned. Last, what do you mean, last child? Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded weakly, repeating the word again and again. Last. Then she raised her trembling hand and pointed to the ceiling, to the sky. She made a motion with her fingers, like fire spreading, like destruction falling down. Daniel's heart pounded. She was trying to tell him something terrible had happened. Her world, her people, maybe even her family gone. And this child, this small, helpless baby, was the last hope. The room felt colder. Despite the fire burning, Daniel sat down slowly, his mind spinning. He stared at the baby, who blinked at him with glowing eyes, innocent and calm. He could not imagine the weight that tiny child carried. The mother leaned closer, coughing as she tried to speak again. Through broken English, she managed a few words. War, fire, no home. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. War, fire, no home. Her people had been destroyed. She had escaped with nothing but her child. And now she was here, on Earth, begging for mercy. Daniel buried his face in his hands. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. He had thought maybe they were just lost, maybe just travelers. But now he understood. They were refugees from a dying world, and the hunters she spoke of were not just chasing her. They were chasing extinction, trying to finish what they had started. The mother's voice broke his thoughts. She spoke again, her tone sharp with warning. Coming, find, no safe. Daniel looked up quickly. His stomach dropped as he realized what she meant. The hunters were searching already. Maybe close. Maybe even in the sky above right now. His hands clenched tightly into fists. He walked to the window, pulling the curtain open just a little. The street looked normal, wet from the storm, empty and quiet. But the quiet felt wrong, too heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. He turned back to the mother. Her eyes begged him. She pointed to the baby again, her voice shaking. Protect. Please, protect. Daniel's chest tightened. Her words were broken. But the meaning was clear. She had risked everything to bring her baby here. And now she was putting that trust in him. A simple man in a small house, the only shield between her child and death. Daniel moved closer, kneeling by the fire. He looked straight into her glowing eyes and spoke with steady voice. I'll protect both of you. I don't care what comes. The baby cooed softly, almost as if it understood. The mother's lips trembled, and fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. She placed her hand weakly on his arm, a silent thank you. For a moment, the room felt filled with something beyond fear, something stronger, hope, fragile but alive. But the peace did not last long. A sudden flash of light crossed the window. Daniel jumped to his feet. His heart slamming in his chest, he ran to the curtain and pulled it back. In the far distance, above the tree line, a strange glow shimmered in the sky. Not the sun, not clouds, something else. The mother gasped, clutching the baby close to her chest. Her voice shook as she whispered one word again and again. Hunt, hunt. Daniel let the curtain fall, his body trembling. It was real. They were here. The hunters had arrived, and he was the only thing standing between them and their prey. The glow in the sky grew brighter as the morning passed. Daniel stood frozen by the window, his breath caught in his throat. He had hoped maybe he was imagining it. Maybe it was just sunlight through the clouds. But when the light flickered and moved against the wind, he knew it was not the sun, not nature. It was something unnatural, something searching. Behind him, the alien mother clutched her baby tightly. Her glowing eyes wide with terror, she whispered the same word again and again. Hunt, hunt. Daniel's hands shook as he pulled the curtain shut. He turned to face them, his heart pounding like a drum. They're here, he whispered, though she already knew. The room felt too small, too exposed. Every wall felt like paper, every crack in the wood like an open window. Daniel's mind raced. If the hunters were close, they would search the town, house by house, street by street. It was only a matter of time before they came here, and when they did, no locked door or window would stop them. He ran to the back of the house. There was an old cellar door leading down to a basement. It was small, dark, and full of dust, but it was hidden. He had not used it in years, but right now, it was the only place to hide. Daniel pulled the door open, coughing as the smell of damp wood rose up. Come on, he said quickly, gesturing for the mother to follow. She stood slowly, weak but determined. The baby pressed close to her chest. Her legs trembled, but the fear in her eyes pushed her forward. She followed him into the basement, each step slow and heavy. Daniel shut the door behind them and pulled an old rug over it. The house above went quiet again. The basement was dark, only faint light from a small window near the ground. Dust floated in the air, the smell of earth thick around them. Daniel helped the mother sit against the wall. The baby whimpered softly, but she rocked it gently, trying to keep it silent. Daniel moved to the window and peeked out. What he saw made his stomach twist. Strange figures were walking down the street, tall, armored, their bodies glowing faintly like metal alive with fire. Their heads turned slowly, scanning each house with bright, cold eyes. They moved with purpose, like hunters who knew their prey was close. The townsfolk had begun to notice. Daniel saw his neighbor, old Mr. Carver, stepping out onto his porch. He waved a hand and called out nervously. But before he could finish his words, one of the hunters raised its arm, and a beam of light shot out. The porch exploded in flames. Mr. Carver screamed and ran, smoke rising behind him. The other neighbors shouted in panic. Doors slammed, windows locked. Chaos spread across the street. The hunters did not rush, they walked slowly, carefully, as if enjoying the fear they created. Daniel pulled back from the window, his chest burning. He had never felt such helpless anger before. These creatures had destroyed the mother's world, and now they were here. He looked at her, holding her baby, tears on her face. She knew what he had seen. Her voice was a whisper. No safe, no safe. Daniel shook his head. We'll find a way, he said, though he was not sure how. The sound of heavy footsteps drew closer. The hunters were on his street now. Their voices echoed, strange and sharp, like metal scraping. Daniel grabbed an old shotgun from the corner of the basement. He had not used it in years, but it was all he had. His hands trembled as he checked the shells. It felt useless against beings like them, but holding it gave him strength. Through the small window, he saw shadows moving past. One of the hunters stopped right outside his house. Its head turned slowly, the glow of its eyes cutting through the dust on the glass. Daniel held his breath, his finger tight on the trigger. The baby whimpered again, and the mother quickly pressed her hand to its mouth. Her eyes begged Daniel to stay quiet. The hunter tilted its head, listening. Daniel felt sweat slide down his neck. One sound, one mistake, and they would be found. After a long moment, the hunter moved on. Daniel let out the breath he was holding, but relief was short, because from outside, he heard a loud voice human. It was his other neighbor, Mrs. Harlan. She was shouting, her voice full of fear and suspicion. I saw him, the man in that house. He's hiding something, check there. Daniel's stomach dropped. She had seen him last night, maybe when he carried the mother inside. Now her words had signed his death. The hunters turned at once, their glowing eyes fixing on Daniel's house. They began walking toward it, their heavy steps shaking the ground. Daniel's grip on the shotgun tightened. He looked at the mother and child, their faces pale with terror. There was no more time. The hunters had arrived, and his home was no longer safe. The ground shook as the hunters marched toward Daniel's house. Their heavy steps made the windows rattle, their glowing eyes scanning every wall. Inside the basement, Daniel's heart pounded so loud he was sure they could hear it. The mother held her baby close, her lips pressed tight, whispering prayers in a language Daniel could not understand. The baby whimpered softly, but she rocked it, trying to keep the sound hidden. Daniel knew the basement would not hold. If the hunters decided to enter, they would tear the place apart in seconds. He needed another plan, something fast, something desperate. His eyes darted across the dusty room until they landed on the far wall. Behind it lay a tunnel, an old mining shaft built long ago. He had not stepped into it for years, but it connected. Under the town, it could be their only chance. He moved quickly, pushing old crates aside. The mother's eyes followed him. Confused, Daniel pulled up a wooden board, revealing a narrow opening. Darkness stretched inside like an endless cave. The smell of earth and stone rushed out. He turned to her and whispered, "We have to go now." She nodded weakly, clutching her child tighter. Her eyes glowed with fear, but also with trust. Daniel grabbed a lantern, lit it, and motioned for her to follow. They stepped into the tunnel, leaving the basement behind. Daniel pulled the board back into place, sealing the entrance. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and silent except for their footsteps. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing like distant whispers. Daniel held the lantern high, guiding the way. The mother walked behind him, slow but steady, her child pressed against her chest. Every step felt like a race against time. Above them, the hunters searched the house. The sound of wood breaking and glass shattering rumbled through the ground. Daniel knew they would not stop until they found something. But for now, the tunnel kept them hidden. They walked for what felt like hours. The only minutes had passed. The tunnel split into two pots, and Daniel hesitated. Left led toward the river, right led deeper under the town. He thought quickly. The river could hide them better, but it was dangerous, cold, and wild. The town's tunnels, though narrow, might lead them closer to others. People who could help or people who might betray. He clenched his jaw and chose right, deeper into the town. As they walked, the faint sound of voices reached them. Daniel stopped, raising his hand. Ahead, through a crack in the tunnel wall, light spilled in. He pressed his eye to the gap and saw townsfolk gathered in the street. Men, women, and children stood in groups, whispering and pointing at the sky. Some cried, some prayed, some argued. The hunters moved among them, their tall bodies glowing with cold fire. They questioned the people, their voices harsh and metallic. Daniel's stomach turned as he watched. These things were searching house by house, forcing everyone to the streets. It was only a matter of time before someone said his name. He pulled back, his face pale. The mother touched his arm, her eyes asking silently, "What now?" Daniel whispered, "We keep moving." And so they did, deeper into the dark. But the sounds of the town above grew louder. Every step echoed with fear. Finally, the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. Old wooden supports lined the walls, and broken tools lay scattered. Daniel set the lantern down and wiped sweat from his brow. For the first time since leaving the house, he let himself breathe. The mother sat against the wall, holding her baby. Her shoulders shook with exhaustion, her lips whispering soft words to the child. Daniel watched her quietly. She looked so fragile yet so strong. She had lost everything, yet she still fought to keep her child alive. He felt a wave of respect and sorrow wash over him. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind them. Daniel grabbed his shotgun and raised it. The mother gasped, holding the baby tight. But the shadows that appeared were not hunters, they were humans. Men from the town, carrying lanterns and tools. Daniel lowered his gun slightly, his breath shaking. "Daniel," one of them whispered sharply, "what have you done? They're saying you're hiding something. Is it true?" Daniel's heart twisted. The men were his neighbors, people he had known all his life, but their eyes were filled with suspicion, fear, and anger. He stood tall, gripping the shotgun. "I'm protecting them," he said firmly, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Protecting what?" One man snapped. "That thing. That's not one of us. Daniel, you're putting us all in danger." The others murmured in agreement, some stepping back, some stepping closer. Daniel shook his head. "They're not dangerous. They're running, they're being hunted." But his words fell heavy against the wall of fear. The men looked at the mother, at her glowing eyes and strange skin. Their fear only grew. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice sharper than before. "If you hand them over, you hand over a child. A helpless child. Is that what you want?" The men hesitated, their anger clashing with their humanity. One man lowered his eyes, shame in his face. Another clenched his jaw, unwilling to answer. Finally, the oldest among them spoke, his voice rough. "You've always been stubborn, Daniel. But if you choose this path, you'll stand alone." With that, the men turned and walked back into the tunnel, their lanterns fading into darkness. Daniel stood there, breathing hard. He felt the weight of their words pressing down on him. He was alone now, not just against the hunters, but against his own people. He looked at the mother and child, their eyes shining in the lantern's glow, and he knew one thing with certainty. Even if all of humanity turned against him, he would not abandon them. The tunnels shook with distant blasts. Above the town, the hunters were tearing through homes, searching for their prey. Daniel stood in the dark chamber, his shotgun gripped tightly, his eyes fixed on the mother and child. He could hear the echo of his neighbor's words. In his head, "You'll stand alone," they had said. But Daniel knew he wasn't truly alone. He had the mother, the baby, and his own will, and sometimes that was enough. The baby whimpered softly. Sensing the danger, the mother rocked it, whispering strange lullabies. Her glowing eyes flicked toward Daniel, full of fear and yet full of trust. Daniel nodded at her, his jaw set. "No matter what happens, I'll protect you," he whispered. The words felt heavy, but they also gave him strength. Suddenly, The tunnel filled with new sounds, heavy footsteps, sharp metallic voices. The hunters had found the way below. Their search had led them closer. The glow of their strange armor flickered in the darkness. Daniel's pulse quickened. There was no more running, no more hiding. The fight had come to him. He quickly scanned the chamber. Old mining tools, loose wood, broken carts. Not much, but maybe enough. Daniel moved fast, setting traps the way he had seen hunters do in the woods. He placed broken planks across the floor, balanced rocks on unstable shelves. He tied rope to an old cart, ready to release it down the tunnel. It wasn't much, but it was human cleverness. Sometimes that was all humanity had, and sometimes it was enough. The mother watched him work, her breathing sharp. When he looked back at her, she raised her hand weakly. She touched her chest. Then the baby, then pointed at him. "Hope," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel's throat tightened. He gave a small nod, then took his position near the entrance. The hunters entered, tall and glowing, their eyes sharp and cruel. They stepped slowly, their voices like grinding. Still, they scanned the chamber, spotting the mother and child. One raised its arm, light building in its weapon, but Daniel pulled the rope, and the cart thundered down the tunnel. It smashed into the lead hunter, knocking it back against the wall. Rocks tumbled down, blocking the entrance for a moment. The chamber filled with dust, shouts, and sparks. Daniel fired his shotgun, the blast echoing like thunder. The shot hit one hunter in a chest, throwing it back. It wasn't dead, but it staggered, its glow flickering. Another hunter charged forward, swinging a glowing blade. Daniel dove aside, rolling across the dirt. He grabbed a pickaxe from the ground and swung it hard. The blade clanged against alien armor, sparks flying. The hunter roared, lifting its weapon high. But Daniel struck again, this time aiming at the joints. The alien stumbled, crashing to the ground. The mother cried out, clutching her baby. Daniel shouted, "Stay back," as more hunters pushed through the rubble. The chamber filled with chaos, beams of light blasting across the walls. Daniel ducked behind a wooden support, the beam cutting through it like fire. He reloaded, fired again, his ears ringing from the noise. The hunters were strong, powerful, almost unstoppable. But Daniel was fast, desperate, and fueled by something they did not understand. He was fighting for life, not his own, but theirs. And that gave him strength. Suddenly, new sounds echoed from behind, shouts, footsteps, human voices. Daniel turned and saw figures rushing into the tunnel. It was the townsfolk, the same men who had doubted him. They carried tools, torches, even old rifles. Their faces were pale with fear, but their eyes burned with something new, determination. They had come back. "Daniel," one of them shouted, "we're with you." The hunters turned, surprised by the sudden wave of humans. The chamber erupted into battle. Men swung axes and hammers. Torches lit the air with fire. Hunters fought back, but they were overwhelmed by numbers. For the first time, the balance shifted. Humanity stood together. Daniel fought at the front, his shotgun blasting again and again. The hunters fell back, their glowing armor dimming under the fury of human strength. One tried to retreat, but Daniel charged, driving the pickaxe into its chest. It screamed, its body shattering like glass. The chamber shook with the sound, then fell silent. The last hunter collapsed, its glow fading into nothing. Breathing hard, Daniel lowered his weapon. The townsfolk stood around him, battered but alive. They looked at the mother and child, their eyes no longer full of fear, but of awe. The mother's glowing eyes shone with tears. She whispered softly, "Safe, safe," and held her child close. Daniel stepped toward her, his chest heaving. He looked at the baby, its small glowing eyes blinking at him. And for the first time, he smelled. The fight was over. For now, but something had changed forever. The townsfolk gathered close, silent and thoughtful. Daniel spoke, his voice rough, but steady. "We proved something today. We're not just humans afraid of the unknown. We're protectors. We're stronger when we stand together." His words echoed in the chamber. The people nodded slowly, their fear replaced by pride. The mother reached out, placing her hand on Daniel's arm, her voice soft but clear. Human, family. Daniel swallowed hard, his heart heavy with emotion. He looked at her and the baby, then at the townsfolk, and he knew he had spoken the truth. This was more than survival. This was humanity's choice, and humanity had chosen compassion. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds. Light spilled across the wet streets of the town. The hunters were gone. Their threat ended. But their memory would never fade. Daniel stood at the doorway of the tunnel, the alien mother and child at his side, and as he looked out at the bright horizon, he whispered, "Sometimes, the bravest thing humans do is protect the helpless."